Welcome to all of you. Welcome to Computer History Museum, or welcome back to the museum if you're coming back. And I see a lot of familiar faces out there, so welcome to all of you. I'm John Holler, the CEO, and it's a pleasure for me to welcome you tonight on behalf of our board and our staff and our members and all of our amazing volunteers. What a really spectacular night tonight as we kick off multiple celebrations of two really important birthday bicentennials in the history of computing, and I'll talk about that more in just a minute. I want to thank the generous underwriters who have made tonight possible and who are making the celebrations we're having over the next few months possible. First, the Association for Computing Machinery. How many ACM members do we have tonight? Nice. Well, welcome to all of you, and thank you, because your membership in ACM helped to make this possible as well. ACM, of course, is the International Society for Computing, founded in 1947. It is the world's largest scientific and educational computing society, 112,000 members of ACM worldwide, and ACM very generously underwrote tonight and the other programs that we're going to be having. Vicki Hansen, who is the Vice President of ACM, is here tonight representing the society, and I'm going to introduce her in just a moment and ask her to make a few remarks. Also, we had additional funding for this celebration by Google. Vint Cerf at Google was instrumental in helping get that arranged, and I want to thank Google and Vint for their generosity. The two birthday bicentennials that we're celebrating this year are George Boole and Ada Lovelace. We are all heirs of Boole and Lovelace, not just those of us in this room or those of us in Silicon Valley, but all of us anywhere on the planet now are heirs of their thinking, and especially the thinking and creativity of George Boole, as we'll learn more about tonight. We're going to celebrate Boole's life and legacy in partnership with our good friends from University College Cork. It was a year ago this month that the president of UCC, Dr. Michael Murphy, and his colleague, Dr. Jean Van Sinderen Law, visited us and said, oh, by the way, 2015 is the bicentennial of George Boole. And of course, to a lot of people, that might not have meant anything, but to those of us who know about the digital logic gallery down in Revolution and know that all of binary computing is based on Boole's work, that was a very important thing for us to learn. And we tonight are culminating a year's collaboration to help celebrate this properly. We will celebrate Ada Lovelace's bicentennial with a new exhibition that will open in the lobby on December 10th, so that's just a few weeks away, and with a series of events next year, a series of events celebrating creativity and diversity in computing. As I mentioned, ACM's generous support has made tonight possible. I mentioned Vicki Hansen, and it's now my pleasure to introduce her and ask her to make a few remarks. Please join me in welcoming Vicki Hansen of ACM.
Hello, everyone. I was really pleased to see that there's so many ACM members out there. That's great to see. I'm really happy to be here tonight on behalf of ACM, and this is a very important night. We're honoring George Boole, who really had such a huge influence on the field of computer science. As John said, ACM is the oldest and largest computing society in the world, and tonight's an example of a great partnership between ACM and the Computer History Museum, whose interests in terms of the foundations of computing and the future of computing really dovetail very nicely with what ACM is trying to accomplish. I do promise that I'm not going to talk very long tonight, because I know you all want to get on to the main event. But I'm going to exercise the sponsor's prerogative and just say a few words about what ACM does and some of the activities that we've got going this year. So first off, ACM is a volunteer-driven society, and we're working to advance computing as a science and a profession. In doing this, we reach more than 3 million people worldwide through our various technical, scientific, and education activities. ACM is the sponsor of some of the most prestigious computing conferences in the world, and through its digital library is the curator of much of the literature in the field. Last year, for example, new content in the digital library was added from ACM's journals, conferences, and magazines, and there were more than 21,000 articles published by authors in the digital library. In terms of technical and scientific development, ACM now has 37 different special interest groups representing different areas in the field of computing. And we also have councils in Europe, India, and China. And these different councils represent the different interests of their communities in these regions of the world. hopefully, some of you have heard of the Heidelberg Laureate Forum. There's some of you out there who've been here. Great, great. So 3 years ago, ACM joined with mathematical societies and started sponsoring the Heidelberg Laureate Forum, which is a gathering of ACM Turing Award winners, Fields Medal winners, and Abel Awards winners. And these laureates gather for a week of talks and meetings with 200 young scientists in computing and mathematics. So every year this happens in Heidelberg, Germany. It's a great event. For practitioners in computing, ACM has recently launched a Q app and has started a new conference called Applicative. And both of these are designed to get new content out there that's leading in the field and get it to the practitioners as they need it. In education, ACM has worked with key agencies and partners in curriculum development. We've got the CS 2013 curriculum for colleges and universities. For K-12, ACM has been a sponsor of Code.org and the Computer Science Teachers of America to help prepare younger students for degrees in computing. So I'm just going to close with one last remark. Although ACM is based in New York City, it's truly an international organization. As John mentioned in his opening comments, we have about 112,000 members, and right now more of those members live outside of North America than live in this country. So we're very pleased to be sponsoring tonight's George Boole event, and as John also said, we will be sponsoring the Ada Lovelace exhibit that will be opening soon, as well as the Babbage and Lovelace lectures that are upcoming here at the Computer History Museum. So that's all I'm going to say. I know that everyone's anxious to see the preview and to have the panel discussion. So thank you very much. And
thank you.
Here's John.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Vicki, thank you again. All right, so for those of you who are tweeting tonight, please use the hashtag Boole. Michael Murphy is going to tell us some pretty amazing statistics about the overwhelming volume of tweets related to Boole's bicentennial. So use the hashtag Boole, and also, if you would, the Computer History Museum's handle, @ComputerHistory, and the Boole handle, @Boole200. So if you're tweeting, and that'll leave you a few characters to actually say something, but then the brand will be all over everywhere, so that's really the important thing. George Boole's work in theoretical mathematics at University College Cork more than a century ago represents the groundwork for all of computing today, all of it. Taken together with Claude Shannon's evolutionary thinking at MIT, Boole's system of logic was a big idea, one of the biggest ever, as it turns out. And tonight we will learn through University College Cork's documentary about Boole's life and times and the biography of that very important idea. Virginia Tehan is Director of Cultural Project at UCC and the project leader for the university. Virginia will introduce and provide you with background on the project now. And let me just remind you, as Vicki said, that immediately after the screening, we're going to have a panel discussion here. Virginia will be back along with UCC President Dr. Michael Murphy and Dr. Kieran Drain, who is the CEO of the Tyndall National Institute in Cork. Virginia, please come up and introduce the film. Thank you and welcome, everyone. Enjoy your night.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, John, and thanks to all your staff and team for making us so welcome here today. It's wonderful for us to be here to present this film, and it's been a while in the making, but in the overall chronology of making films, we only started about a year ago, and here we are at this wonderful screening here this evening. I feel in a way that I have no right to be here. I'm not a technician, and if I'm really honest, I confess to my colleagues, the mathematicians and the engineers and the scientists, I really don't understand Boolean algebra. My background is fine art, so I'm very far away from your world, but I admire your world. And when we started working on this film, there were all sorts of various themes and approaches and suggestions which were presented. And they were all very valid, very real, very important, and very worthy. But the key objective, which my boss, the president, Dr. Murphy, said was, we want this accessible, we want people to know about George Boole, we want this to be seen internationally, and we want people who don't know about Boole to understand his life and his genius. We commissioned an excellent UK-based firm, Oxford Film and Television, to make the production. And we put together a small little team amongst the production team, looking at how we were going to approach this big task, because it is a hard task to recreate, to capture a life. And there were a few key points which emerged from those fairly frantic discussions last January. And one of them came from my own past. My earliest job was actually in North America, in Canada, in a wonderful place called Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump. I don't know if there are any Canadians here. And if you know it, in Alberta, yes, I can see Kirsten, she knows Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump. And one of our key exhibits there was a textile made by the First Nations peoples. And if you know textiles and the anthropology of textiles, the people believed, well, the women believed, that there is a single fine wool or silk thread, the spirit line, which holds everything together. And that's the most important element of the fabric. And we came to the conclusion that that's what we needed to capture. We needed to excavate out all the information, all the stories, all the theories, all the interpretation, and find that essence, that spirit line that is George Boole. So that is what we've set out to do. It's the beginning of a dialogue. This film does not pretend to answer all the questions. It doesn't deal with all of Boole's mathematics. It shines light on one man's genius, and that's all we set out to do, is to shine a light. And in shining that light, it's come to our attention, and in these panel discussions, which I'm now part of, that Boole had many other contemporaries in Ireland and in Britain who are frequently forgotten. People like John Tyndall, people like William Rowan Hamilton, Johnson Stoney, who founded the electron, who was grandfather of Alan Turing, William Parsons. All of these men were men, Irish men, working in Ireland in the 19th century. Many of you in this room work with the results, the fruits of their technologies. And we've done very little in Ireland and across the world to acknowledge them. So we also want to do that, to increase our knowledge as a community of people, of technologists and of scholars and museum curators and just citizens of the world, to shine a light where it needs to be shown.
Let me welcome our panelists. You have met Dr. Michael Murphy, president of the University College Cork, who you were splendid in the film. Congratulations, that was great. Of course, you've met Virginia Tien, who led the project at the university, and there is a tremendous amount of work that has to go into producing a film like this, so congratulations to you as well, Virginia. And you will have not yet met, so let me please introduce to you Dr. Kieran Drain, who is the CEO of the Tyndall National Institute in Cork, which does a tremendous amount of world-leading research in information and communications technology, has a staff of 450, and some of his alumni appeared in the film, and we'll talk a little bit about how that all came to be too. So thank you all for being here, and welcome. Michael, let me start with you, please. I'd like for you to talk a little bit about why this was so important to the university and the byproduct of this. You were talking about taking Boole from lowercase b to uppercase B, which I think is a fantastic way to visualize this. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right, John. First of all, thank you for having us.
It's our pleasure.
Computer History Museum. I'm a university president, medical background, by the way, so don't try me on logic gates. But I became aware of the fact that George Boole's birthday was coming up. And I read the biography by Des McHale. And one of the responsibilities of anybody in the education business is to provide heroes to inspire our students. As educationists, that's a really important role in life. And I felt that Boole fitted or filled most of the criteria for hero. I mean, if you look back, of course, in Ireland, we're very conscious of the criteria for canonization. It was set out by, I think it was Augustine of Hippo about 1,500 years ago. You had to thrive under faith, hope, and charity. And in fact, he met all those criteria. Because from the very outset, Boole was a guy who had a sense of destiny, that he had a duty to do something great for humanity, and a belief that he would do it. And that came through the biographical material. He was an optimist, and he certainly met the criteria for charity, because you could see the scale of his social conscience. In his early days, not covered here, in Lincoln, he took a big interest in social problems in the city, prostitution and so on. And in Cork, he exhibited the same sense of obligation to serve. And during famine times, that came through there. So he met all the criteria for not just being a local hero, which was important to us, but a global hero. And we felt that it should be shared. Google, you may have seen some of the data on the slide there. Boolean with a lowercase b, 40 million pages. George Boole with a capital B, a couple of 100,000. And as you said, we felt that this was a story that we should share globally, and particularly with the huge technological industry that is based on his work. So that was the motivation. Honor the man and his genius, and inspire new generation of kids in our campus and campuses around the world. That was the driving force.
And how has that been received at the university? Is he now seen in a different light? I mean, you made the amazing observation in the film that in your years as a student at Cork, you don't believe you ever heard his name mentioned once. That with the banners and everything else surely has changed dramatically this year.
Well, I suppose you could say medical students were poorly educated in the 1970s. The computer scientists heard of him. Of course, we've changed it, and we have invested a lot of effort in this initiative. I'm happy to say this is one of a big series of events. We have been invited to make presentations, Moscow State University at the All-Russian Science Festival. Boole was honored at the United Nations, October 20, World Statistics Day, General Assembly resolution. Chennai, India are honoring Boole on Friday next. The European Parliament in Brussels are doing it on December 4. We've got the message out there, and of course, November 2, we had this magnificent Google Doodle, which was global, except for the United States and Mexico. And I spent 10 years in Chicago, so I know that the World Series is everywhere except the rest of the world. Same inverse phenomenon. But we actually reached 140 million on Twitter that day, and over 25 million searches for Boole on Google. And it was the most searched topic on Wikipedia in virtually all languages that day. So the campus is aware that they have a local hero who's now probably a global hero.
Yeah.
That's what we wanted to achieve.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
That's wonderful. And as brethren in computer history, we salute you for that. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. And I suppose we have to thank our alumni and our industry partners, and got a lot of help around the world, because I think people actually, the story resonated with them once it was presented to them.
Virginia, I want to ask you about what it was like to try to put this together. And this is obviously a challenge on several levels. You've got someone, as Michael has pointed out, not extraordinarily well known, but so important. You have the obvious difficulty of no film, no footage, nothing of George Boole. Everything had to be recreated. And you have really, I think, as you put it when we were talking earlier, the most difficult of jobs, which is to not only tell the biography of a man, but a biography of an idea. So what was it like to try to do that with this project?
At times it was fairly scary. It was an interesting journey. I mean, our approach really was, as I said in the introduction, to attempt to get the essence of the man. And we quickly understood that we couldn't tell all the stories. I mean, there are parts of his mathematics, as Des McHale, his biographer, has said, he would like to have seen more about probability in the film. And that didn't work, that didn't fit into the narrative. Boole's wife is a very interesting woman, and his daughters were extremely eminent in their own fields. And again, that's another story that needs to be told in another way. He himself, as Michael has alluded to, had many other aspects to his personality. He was a very deep and interesting person. And as you say, there's very little evidence besides his letters. We're very lucky at the university in that we have the Boole archive, and the archive is digitized and available online on our website. And also there are archival collections in the Royal Society which have relevant material, and some other collections around. But that, and perhaps some of the published works, are helpful. But other than that, we were dependent upon the community of scholars and the community of experts, some of whom are here, who really gave a validation as to his legacy. It was the biography of an idea, and an idea or ideas that weren't fully realized, perhaps until they were applied. And we took what was a bold step in scholarly terms to look at application as opposed to focus exclusively on the scholarship. We worked on looking at some key areas where we could demonstrate that there was impact. And that was really helpful. We were very, very lucky in that the film was filmed in Cork at the university. The university is very photogenic. And the film company were very clever about the reconstructions, because reconstructions can be sometimes really, just awkward and they don't work. But they were very careful about making sure that they fitted in. The university community were wonderful. The music was in the main performed by our artists in residence. And we had the support of David Putnam, Lord Putnam, who's a leading film producer, who's an adjunct professor at the university. He was an advisor to the project. And then Jeremy Irons was the narrator. So we had some very key supportive people who, worked together to make it successful. It was very much a collective effort that grew from an idea, and our focus was on the biography of the idea and not so much on the small detail. Those details, those seeds are now sown, and they will grow in other fields and they will flourish. But we've set out to achieve something that's a beginning and not an end.
That's wonderful. Kieran, I'm going to get to you in just a second about the sort of the natural the things to which we're all heirs, and you know it very well at Tyndall. But before I do that, Michael, just to turn back to you for a minute. So naturally, in every film, there are things that get left on the cutting room floor that don't make it into a film like this. Is there anything, in your following the project and your study of the project, was there anything that you felt were related to Boole that perhaps just couldn't make it into the film that are important or interesting?
I suppose what struck me about it was that we call him the father of symbolic logic, or perhaps you might say Leibniz had lit that flame. But there were actually some very interesting symbolisms that came across to me in the story, not all captured here. One, I suppose, is the eternal message that we really have an obligation to democratize education and to make it available across the spectrum. I mean, if you look at the globe today, the scale of poverty and growing poverty as dependency ratios are increasing in countries across the globe for different reasons. Just think of the pool of latent talent that lies out there, that's untapped, and where we have an obligation to enable that talent which Boole represented to flourish. A second piece, and of course it didn't fall on the floor, but I think it's important to emphasize it again, the symbolism. Multilingualism was celebrated. It was mentioned a few times. And the advantage that conferred on Boole back in the mid-1800s, his ability to access knowledge across the spectrum of cultures and languages. And that's, again, important for us today because we have become extremely monolingual as a society. We're losing the richness of the human experience by not being able to individually access culture, the drama, the poetry of others. And even if there are people here who are from the marketing fraternity, there's always a message to be remembered. Germans sell in English, but they buy in German. And of course, you can substitute any country, any language for that. So the importance of individual multilingualism, celebration of that. And it reminds me, of course, I was in Moscow a few weeks back and made a presentation. And of course, I was reminded right away that it should be the Boole-Shannon-Shestakov story. And I retaliated by saying that was their own fault because Shestakov was a student at Moscow State University and in 1937 presented a thesis with exactly the same, at least they allege, the same concepts that Shannon promulgated. But because it was published only in Russian and not until 1941, Shestakov lost out. So that's another message from the story here that symbolically should be celebrated. And then the third, I might say a few words on it later, the fact that he had 5 daughters and the fact that the Boole story provides a poster family for women in science. We might come back to that again.
Yes, let's do.
A minute.
I want to revisit that.
Symbolisms that are important and resonate in modern society, all illustrated in that life story.
Kieran, there's a strong link made in this film between Boole's ability to do research and to really pursue his ideas at university and then leading to this extremely creative and innovative way that he developed as a thinker. What do you see now running this major research institute about those relationships and this whole model that Boole embodied and how it affects your work today at the institute?
When obviously there's a lot of things in that in terms of applied versus basic research and,
Sure.
and the role of research centers to create the next breakthrough versus being directed by the challenge in front of your face. So there's a whole topic in that. But if you think that, how many years, 80 years, whatever, that Shannon waited to find Boole's book to help him solve that problem. So I do think that there is an opportunity by an increased intimacy between industry, let's say applied research and universities research to make those translations of new and exciting thoughts to impact in a much more condensed time frame, not to have serendipity of reading a book 80 years later, but actually really meld those two worlds together. So encourage basic research, but do it in a way that you're intimate and indeed cohabitating with industrial researchers so that you get some fundamental thought, with fundamental thought against immediate challenges, and therefore able to exploit research in a much more fast and efficient way.
Mm. Do you see this meditation on Boole that we're all engaged in this year as important background to the Institute, to the work that you're doing, to the educational process that you see unfolding and leading to the support for everything you're engaged in?
Well, we would have been called the Boole National Institute, but the mathematicians up on the university took the name. So we ended up being the Tyndall National Institute, and the microbiologists at the university are mad at us because, of course, Tyndall, beyond his photonics work, also did great work in microbiology. So we have some fun with that. But I do think that one of the very, very positive things about the movie, again, is bringing visibility to the work of the Institute, and also really informing this debate about basic research and its juxtaposition or its relationship to applied and directed research. So I think the movie does bring that into sharp focus. And within Ireland, it's actually quite a debate. In Ireland, we have a very small country, and we're able to, let's say, plan and orient things in a very efficient way. And so we have a very clear prioritization on what the national research priorities are, and they do link to our economy, which is a very positive thing in actually raising employment standards of living. But there is that debate of what's the balance between those two things. And I think this movie puts in perspective what are the grand challenges? Are we giving people the freedom to pursue those?
And you have quite a relationship with the West Coast, with Silicon Valley in particular. You want to talk a bit about the relationship between what you do and the partners you have here?
Absolutely, and it's a frequent journey for me to this part of the world. Our economy in Ireland is almost 50% foreign direct investment. So we've come in a short period of time, 30, 40 years, to being a country that unfortunately exported a lot of people to now a country that's strongly a knowledge-based economy. And that has been by encouraging a lot of tech companies to set up their wares in Ireland. And they do that for a number of reasons, but they also certainly do it because of the talent that's available. And as a result, we have an ecosystem in Ireland of all of the big names in microelectronics, medical device technology, pharmaceutical. And with that, that puts us as a research partner. And I think it's very rewarding and exciting for us to know that there are great universities here in California. Why would a company like Intel do basic research with a research institute thousands of miles away? I happen to be sitting in Ireland next to Intel's biggest, most advanced fab in Ireland, but I don't work with that fab in Ireland. I work with advanced research in Portland and Santa Clara. And so that's a reinforcement to us that the work we do is of a level that it's worth the effort from them. And it also gives us a chance, if you will. You made the baseball analogy earlier, but I consider working with the companies here in the Valley our opportunity to play Major League. And by playing with those big companies, we raise our level to the point where we can justify their interest in us.
I feel a need to make a hurling analogy in some way, but I don't know. You know baseball far better than I know hurling. Maybe I'll just give me a minute to think about that, and then I'll try to do that.
I'll have to interject here, of course, that one of Boole's grandsons-in-law invented the first artificial baseball thrower.
Well, there you go.
That wasn't in the movie.
I'll check his name. I think.
Now I'm really challenged.
Yep. It's a fact. I'll check his name later. Yep.
Michael, I'm going to go back to something you raised a minute ago, which is Boole's 5 daughters, all of whom turned out to be pretty remarkable, and not only in carrying on his work, but doing a lot of original work in their own right as scientists and mathematicians. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I think the family story, I would suggest, if anybody has a few $100,000 in their pocket, is worth another movie. Probability 1 in 32 that you'll have 5 daughters. That wasn't a good start. And this, of course, the sad story, the sad element of it is that Boole died when the eldest was only 8. The youngest was 6 months. But the 5 daughters, as you said a moment ago, went on to be really famous. The eldest was a mathematician, married a mathematician. Their son became an FRS. A granddaughter worked with Enrico Fermi on the Manhattan Project. In fact, one of the few women on that project. And she became very famous because she objected to dropping the bomb on Hiroshima and went off to China to work with Mao Zedong. And most elderly Chinese will be familiar with her. She's known in China as Han Chung. She was the first Western woman to become a citizen of the People's Republic of China. So there was a great story all the way down. We did a genealogy project as part of this celebration. So we've been putting all this together. Another daughter, a mathematician, she invented the term of polytope. Now, I remember I'm a country doctor. But she became very well known in mathematics circles. Sister Lucy became the first professor in the United Kingdom in chemistry in London at the Royal Free. Ethel Lillian, the youngest, the 5th daughter, is known to every Russian of our age, even younger, because she married a chap called Voynich, and she wrote The Gadfly, textbook in Russia and China for decades. There was a movie. Shostakovich wrote the score for the movie. So you could spend the whole night talking about genius being passed on genetically to a large degree, I suspect. Another one of them appeared in the movie, Jeffrey. An absolutely fantastic story, a poster family, particularly for women in science. And I'd really recommend that as the next documentary.
Are you up for that, Virginia? You ready to produce the second documentary?
Yes, definitely. And we'll have lots more women.
Talk about the onward distribution of this film. As we were talking earlier today, I was really fascinated and actually so happy that this is getting the public acclaim that it's getting, and there's more and more interest being shown in the film. So talk a bit about what's going on with that.
Yes, I mean, it's wonderful because we, over a year ago, went to our national broadcaster to pitch the idea to them, and really they weren't that interested. So then the university decided to commission the film itself. And we have since sold the film to the national broadcaster, and it was transmitted on the 1st of September. And now we have interest from a huge number of broadcasters in Europe, in Denmark, Sweden, 2 in Australia, BBC Worldwide, and an interest from Discovery Channel, also from Canada. And we've had a showing in China. We have the film, it's subtitled in Chinese, and it's also, there are private screenings as well. There are a number of private screenings coordinated in India. And a number of film festivals as well have taken it up. So there's been a huge interest from all the various constituencies that you would desire in film production. And we're really pleased because we didn't know what to expect. So it's worked, yeah, it's worked.
That's wonderful.
It's
good. That's just wonderful. We're gonna hear from you, and I mentioned Jean earlier in just a minute because we have something special to let you in on tonight related to the restoration of the Boole house, which you saw in the film. But before I get to that, let me just ask you the final question, Michael. So you mentioned at one point in the film that present day, if George Boole were alive today, getting the research funded that he was able to do in his day might not be possible. And I actually think that resonates really well in this country, in this audience, in this location as well, because it seems to be now a worldwide problem. What do you think about that? Do you want to elaborate on that thought at all?
Universities encourage dissent. So I'm actually going to dissent a little from my colleague here
okay.
in relation to comments. I mean, around the world, and certainly in Europe, governments are walking away from funding higher education and to a significant degree walking away from funding research, and are promoting engagement with industry, which is extremely good and extremely important up to a point. I mean, there has to be some consideration given to impact and likely impact and relevance. But my concern is that the business sector has now achieved, certainly in Europe, an excessively dominant role in determining the research agenda, moving moving us too far along the spectrum towards being development agencies. And I have a serious problem with that. I think that the business sector's primary interest will always be primary, but not exclusively, on the near-to-market forms of research. But you do need a pipeline of fundamental work coming through at all times. And you can't predict the impact of work at that end of the spectrum. And if you can predict it, what's the point in doing it? I'm particularly worried about mathematics and basic sciences. And I just wanted to make the point that there is an important place for what might be called useful, useless research. And in a way, Boole is an absolutely classic example of the value of curiosity-driven, blue skies research. And I just wanted to get that point across, that we've got to stop and think a bit more critically about current public policy in prioritizing research expenditure. That was what I was trying to get across.
Bravo. That's very good. Thank you. All right, so Dr. Jean Van Sinderen-Law, who is the Associate Vice President of Development at the University College Cork, is going to join us here on stage.
I'm going to step down.
Michael, Kieran, and I are going to step down, and she and Virginia are going to tell you a little bit about the development of Boole House and the plans for that in Cork. And welcome, Jean. It's so good to have you up here.
Thank you very much,
Thanks very
John.
much. And Virginia, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for coming here this evening and for your attention. And I hope you enjoyed the film as much as Virginia certainly, and I, from a distance, enjoyed it being made. I think the university is presented very beautifully in it, and it's a great story, and it's a story that needed to be told and now has been told. I'm the Associate Vice President of Development at University College Cork, a molecular biologist by background, so certainly have used the applications that are described in this in research work that I would have done in the past. In the film, you saw the house in which the book, An Investigation of the Laws of Thought, was written. The house is derelict. The house was in private ownership for quite a while, and a lot of pressure was brought to bear on us at the university to acquire it and to bring it back to its former splendor. In the book, when George Boole was writing it, he describes looking out the window, a particular window, and seeing the meandering river in front of him. So the book and the ideas and the thoughts that were generated and that house are intrinsically linked. All we are custodians of a legacy. We're the university in which George Boole came in those horrible years from a historic perspective in Ireland, the years of the Great Famine. And it's interesting, I know the analogies were drawn between the film and some of the comments that were made this evening, but if you think about it, 1845 to 1849 were the worst years in the history of our country. And so many people, I guess, who are here and elsewhere throughout this country are descendants of people who would have emigrated around that time. So there are very important linkages between the United States and Ireland, very important linkages between the United States and this part of your country and our part of our country. So we see some very tangible linkages between both. This evening, we want to just tell you what it is the university, as custodians, want to do with that house. It's not ours, it will never be ours. It is ours collectively. Many of you here are people who have spent your life researching and building on the genius of George Boole. Many of the things that you've done or that you support are underpinned by his work. And so I think it's ours collectively, and not just in this country or in ours, it's throughout the world. So we're here today, we are just custodians with big shoulders, with this legacy on it, and we want to ensure that the house in which George Boole wrote An Investigation on the Laws of Thought is conserved, and that it becomes the conduit for looking to the future. What we have done for the last years, we have celebrated a life, a man born 200 years ago, and we have looked to the past. There's no point in spending your life looking backwards. As they say, the rear view mirror is not the most inspirational in a car. It's the windscreen. And the windscreen, as we look to the future, is going to be done and conducted through this house as the conduit. So the kind of ideas that we have and that we're going to invite you to contribute to us on relate to the use of this house. So just for a few minutes, Virginia, who is well placed to talk about the conservation, will give you a brief outline as to what we want to do, and then I will come back to you and I might suggest why you might do it and what it is you could do if you were to do it.
Thank you, Jean. Well, as outlined in the film, and you'll see on the two slides behind me, the university has acquired, with the support of our local authority, the local city, this property, which was Boole's home for a number of years. And we have acquired it because we feel we have a responsibility to protect it. It's an important monument in the history of science, and it's one of those monuments that could almost be classified as one of the IEEE milestones of science. We work, as Jean said, only as custodians. The house is over 200 years. It was built at a time of economic flourishing in Ireland at the end of the 18th century, when Cork City was expanding because of the growth of industry. Because just across the river from the house, there was the development of distilling. And in those distillery sites, we now have the Tyndall National Institute. So there's a continuous thread of innovation and growth and industrial development in this part of the city. And on the edge of that industrial development was the development of very splendid 18th century houses. And these wonderful villas, which are now sadly neglected and decayed because people left the houses. About 100 years ago, they became hugely unpopular as family homes, and there was the development of the suburban satellites on the edge of the city, which were serviced much more fully and more comfortable for family living. So these type of large properties became uncomfortable and were let out as flats, as we call them, apartments. And it was in that kind of very basic type of functionality. It existed for almost 100 years. And we met somebody here this evening who lived in a flat in that building, a very damp, unpleasant place to live. But it was and is a very beautiful, fine building, a fine structure. Irish architecture of the 18th century represents some of the finest European architects. And just around the corner from the building is a hospital called the Mercy Hospital. But this was designed in 1768 by an Italian called Davis Duchardt, who also designed about 3 other Palladian-style buildings in Ireland. So even the integrity, the historic integrity of this terrace of houses, they're very important. But historic integrity is even more important when one understands that the association of the scientific significance of this site is magnified because of Boole's presence there. As Jean has said, we are only custodians. We, the university, are not in the business of heritage preservation, but we do have responsibilities to protect and recognize and acknowledge those who have made significant global contributions, because if we don't do it, one of our own, who else is going to do it? We can't do it alone. This is part of a monument of the wider achievements in the scientific community, and this is something that we'd like to explore a little bit more fully.
So the university is branded University College Cork, a tradition of independent thinking. The book, An Investigation on the Laws of Thought, was written in this house. So I think it's right and fitting that into the future it becomes the Boole House of Thought or the Boole House of Innovation. It's not up to us, though, to prescribe what that house should be, because, as I said, it's ours collectively. So one thing is certain, though, is that it will be a place where talent will be developed. The Chinese proverb states, if you want 1 year of prosperity, grow rice. If you want 10 years of prosperity, grow trees. If you want 100 years of prosperity, grow people. And that's what we're in the business of, and all of us in all universities, that's what we're in the business of. We can't afford to wait much longer. This house is on its last legs, so this is the time, and we just happen to be here, and you happen to be here at this time in the entire history. So why would you be minded, perhaps, to help us on this journey? And the journey is to raise approximately $2.5 million. And why would you do it? You might do it because you are interested in nurturing talent. You might do it because you realize that independent thinking is vital. You might do it because you feel sorry for us and you want to help us. You might do it because you feel that the work of George Boole has underpinned you and your livelihood and the success of you and your family. You might do it because you know that through these investments, that if we in this period, 2015, don't do it, those that will succeed us 100 years and 200 years from now will have lost out on what is a very important global legacy. So that's one reason, or several reasons, I suppose, why you might do it. We pride ourselves on relationship building. When people come on board as donors or contributors to University College Cork, you come on board as a partner. And I will boldly say we pride ourselves on customer satisfaction and an 80% repeat sale. So the point is, when people do get involved with the university, and we want to work with you to consider what it is you might want to gain out of this partnership. We have 501c3 status in the United States. We have tax-effective giving in the United Kingdom and, of course, in Ireland. So quite frankly, I have development in my title. I'm making an appeal to you to consider supporting and engaging in partnership with us on the journey which will begin when we restore that house. Second part of the appeal is that, as I said, it's not ours to decide what exactly we should do with it. It is ours collectively. So if there's anybody here who has an idea or who thinks that they can advise us on how that house should be used in the context of its history and what happened there, and what it is as a university, a research university. All our teaching is informed by research, and a university which partners globally with other universities and with industry. You might consider. And finally, there are people who have no interest at all in George Boole and no interest in Boolean algebra or Boolean logic, but who have a great interest in Ireland and who have got a connection to Ireland and possibly a connection to Cork. And quite frankly, there's room for everybody, and we'd love to engage with you in partnership. So at this point, I want to thank Dr. Holler and the staff of the Computer History Museum. I want to thank all of you for giving so generously of your time in coming here and hearing the story. And just remember, we're just custodians. So thank you very, very much. Thank you, John. Thank you.
So if you can give us one more minute, I was told earlier this evening, our friends from Ireland are so incredibly generous, and they have been from the beginning of this project. There's a small presentation that Michael, my new good friend, would like to make, and so it's just a pleasure to have you back up here, and
Thank you, John.
Let's talk.
I just want to thank John and the staff of a wonderful facility, unique in the world.
Thank you
for having us and for allowing us the opportunity to tell the story of George to people, the life story of George, to people who have been using his mathematics without really knowing who he was. So I want to thank you. And I have a little presentation for you this evening, which we commissioned for the year, a limited edition print. And it features front page of the Laws of Thought, a letter in Boole's handwriting in Lincoln, 1853. There's a depiction on the Aula Maxima window, a watercolor of the university, and in here a very nice quotation from George. No matter how correct a mathematical theorem may appear to be, one ought never to be satisfied that there was not something imperfect about it until it also gives the impression of being beautiful. And I want to leave you with that thought.
Thank you, Michael.
In your office for the next 40 years. Thank you very much, John. And thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.
I will dutifully see that this is accessioned into our permanent collection in the morning as an artifact of the celebration of the bicentennial of George Boole's birthday. Thank you again for sharing this amazing film with us tonight and on this journey that we've been on for a year. Thank you for coming. I hope to see you again on December 10th when we celebrate Ada Lovelace and at our other events coming up with the bicentennial celebrations next year. Thanks, everyone, and have a good night.